Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Mary Millben, a world-renowned singer, actress, and a true ambassador of peace through music. Mary, it's an honor to have you with us today. Thank you for joining AMAC's Better for America.
Well, Rebecca, it is so great to see you, and thank you to all of your team and the AMAC audience. It's a joy to be with you, and such an honor to share with you today.
And an honor to have you with us, Mary. You have performed for 3 U.S. presidents, and you were recently invited by Prime Minister Modi to India's 75th Independence Day celebration. I think that your ability to bring cultures together through music is truly remarkable. So, Mary, can you tell us how you went from being an intern at the White House under George W. Bush to being the first American musician invited to attend India's Independence Day celebration?
Well, I think this response you will understand, your audience will understand. It is the grace of God that positions us all in what we do across the world and in our daily activity. And so I know that truly is the answer. The Lord, who I always give honor to, and all through all of my success and achievements, He just had me in the right place at the right time, certainly for these moments. And growing up in Oklahoma, my parents are retired ministers. Our church just had a very strong relationship with the political arena, certainly in the state and across America. So my early days as a teenager had a lot of interfaces and activity with American politics, and so that really is what spurred my interest as a young person and a young leader, which led me to intern at the White House for President Bush. It's what led me to then go on and work as a White House appointee for the last 4 years of President Bush, 43. And it was the White House and being in Washington, D.C. that certainly started my career as an entertainer. My first jobs, certainly that put bread and butter on my table, were singing for both sides of the aisle, in fact, in Washington, D.C., and certainly the Kennedy Center and Arena Stage and the theaters in Washington, D.C., which then led me to New York and Broadway Theater and then India. The rest is history. So, the dual life that I have been blessed to share between American politics and entertainment certainly is at the root of working as an intern to being honored, truly honored to attend the 75th anniversary of India's Independence Day last year.
Just amazing. It really is amazing to see how music has the power to bring people together, especially in a world where we often face many language and cultural barriers. We're seeing similar challenges and struggles, Mary, for individual freedoms across the world, whether it's the farmer protests in the Netherlands, the trucker strikes in Canada, or the response to lockdowns in Australia, for example. So it's really clear that people everywhere are really fighting for some very basic rights. Now,
Yes.
you're an ambassador for education in Africa. Can you tell us about your efforts there, in Africa specifically?
Sure. Well, I tell you, as a child and certainly a kid in the ministry, we were very fortunate to spend a lot of time in our youth ministry doing mission work and traveling the world, certainly seeing those conditions that you just described in the context of freedoms across the world. As young people, we were exposed to that through mission work, and certainly seeing what's going on and across the continent of Africa was certainly those things were visible at an early stage in my childhood. And so the desire to marry my platform, certainly with philanthropic work and work that was making humanity better, was a non-negotiable, because it was something that really stirred and brewed from my days as a child and a young teen doing mission work in our church. And so during the course of my career, certainly as an artist, as most artists, all entertainers do, there are moments where that energy collides, where your exposure, certainly as an entertainer, collides with opportunities to do good and help people in need. And so that always was at the focal point of my career, and certainly now is the most important part of my career. How can I use this platform, this exposure, to help someone in need? And so I was I was introduced to Education Africa, which is a nonprofit in South Africa. It was started by the late President Nelson Mandela and the late Walter Sisulu. And it is one of the preeminent and probably most prominent nonprofits in South Africa that is directly bringing educational opportunities, specifically artistic opportunities, all types of opportunities to the poorest areas in South Africa. Back in 2013 was my introduction in going to South Africa and meeting the children and the parents and seeing the scope of what the late President Mandela and the late Walter Sisulu and the CEO, currently founder, James Irdong, started. And I tell you, to see the lives that have been changed and the families that have been empowered, and how Education Africa has now really become a model across the continent, across Africa, for engaging other parts of the world to really help benefit those poorest areas and families in South Africa. It is, I tell you, I am preparing to go back this year. This will be my first time going back. Certainly post-COVID, and I'm just so looking forward to seeing the children and the families and doing everything that I can to elevate the importance of how we are living our lives and using our careers to better humanity, to make someone else's life better. My pastor says that all the time. Real success is when you can sit down and say, you know what, today I made someone else's life better. And that's what life is all about. That's what success is all about. And it's something that I have been blessed to do in the context of Education Africa. The real results that I see and have seen of children going on to college, these beautiful children that, I mean, you're talking the poorest conditions that you could imagine in Africa, going on to college and going on to careers and being the first in their families, to give back. It's remarkable. And so
it is such a beautiful, beautiful story. I love the stories of people who are living out a purpose-driven life, and really imagine, Mary, the hope that you inspire when young people have you to turn to and say, look at this woman who's beautiful inside, who's got a heart and a voice and a passion for people. So it is just such a beautiful story and something that we need to celebrate. And you've had this unique opportunity to perform for 3 presidents, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. And they're all so different, right? Yet you have had the personal experience with each of them. Can you share with us a favorite story or memory from each one and tell us how your relationship with each was unique or different?
Sure. Well, I tell you, and you're exactly right, because each administration, each presidential personality, each orbit is very different. So, yeah, it is. But they were all such memorable moments, and I'll say that really quickly, just up front, when people ask me this question, and certainly in the context of my own personal convictions. Anytime you are asked to sing for a president, Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter the political party. It's such an honor. It's an honor to sing for the leader of the free world, and certainly to represent your country, and certainly represent America in the context of what you're doing. So it's always an honor. I think, so a quick story from each. With President Bush, I was actually still working for him. It's how things really got started for me. I remember I was sitting in my office and getting ready to leave for the day. And a friend of mine called. She worked for First Lady Laura Bush. And she said, look, we're having this Christmas tour at the White House, and just so the audience knows, White House Christmas tours happen every year, every Christmas.
They're gorgeous.
Yes, and the president and the first lady invite everybody possible from both sides of the aisle to come through, and you see the White House, and it's really a beautiful time. So that's what this conversation was about. And so my friend said, we need someone to come over and sing some Christmas carols while people walk through the White House. Can you come over, like in an hour or so? And I said, I'm getting ready to leave the office, and I can't, we worked on teams to bring in celebrity names and folks to come sing for events at the White House and things like this. And so I said, I can't do that. She said, oh no, we've cleared it with the family and everything's good. So just, can you come over in an hour? So this is a true story, Rebecca. I called the dude who was a law student at Georgetown University. We used to do this in our sleep, singing at parties and things in Oklahoma. He was a classical pianist. And I said, look, grab a tuxedo, come over in an hour and a half. We're going to do some carols and things for about an hour and a half at this party. That's exactly what happened. The evening went on, woke up the next day, got into work, and my dear friend called and said, hey, come over. The first family would like to visit with you. And, and during that performance that night, the president was not scheduled to be there, but he stepped in and surprised, and it was a big moment, and kind of like sometimes President Trump does when he pops into surprise for events and things.
Right.
And so the next morning, I go over, visit with the family, and long and the short, Rebecca, the conversation to me was, look, we heard you singing, and this was the first time that they had heard me sing, and he said, you have your whole life to go into politics or law school or whatever, but you may have one very small window to jump in and perform and do this as a career. And so that moment and conversation is what really started my career in the arts. And I credit God first, but I always credit publicly the Bushes, because they really encouraged me to do this and bring music to the world. And so they're a big part of my origin, certainly still a big part of my life.
I love this story.
And
this is just beautiful. Yeah. Tell me about, and then with Barack Obama, that must have been very fun and interesting as well.
It was, and certainly I had some really beautiful moments from performing in a group of singers, a choir for his inaugural events, to some actually campaign events during his second term, and then performing at the White House for Christmas time as well. I think probably one of my most memorable was I was asked to perform at a rally for him. It was a campaign rally, and it was in Virginia, in fact. And of course, he was very aware of my association, certainly, and alliance with the Republican Party and being a conservative. But he was so kind to ask me to come and sing. And I remember when I walked out on stage, we had some visits before, and he had thanked me for coming and performing Christmas for them and the family and administration. And I remember they said, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mary Millben, a Republican for President Obama. And I remember I said, what in the world? Why did they announce me like that? But I tell you what it did, Rebecca, in a positive way, is that it opened a great dialogue that I was able to have throughout the course of singing for the Obamas about the days when we had statesmen and stateswomen, and we could, as Republicans or Democrats, sit at the table and talk about policy and talk about hard conversations, and let those things be on the outside and remind us all at the table about our commonality as Americans. I remember so much of that performance and performances for the Obama administration allowed me as an entertainer and a conservative to speak about the commonality of who we are as Americans. That's what matters most then and today, And so that moment particularly, I remember it was a joke at the time, but it was always what was referred to whenever my interfaces came up with President Obama. And I was proud. Yeah. And I'd say probably with President Trump, there were so many, many great memories being with he and First Lady Melania Trump during their years at the White House. And I would say the most memorable, and there were many, was singing for his reelection rally in Orlando. It's the largest rally that he has held to date. It was at the Amway Center in Orlando. And I tell you, I remember how quickly all of it happened. It was a very last minute call. And in fact, it's the one moment in my career as a performer I remember never having a real sound check. You always have a sound check. You never miss that. It's a formality that you have to have. And no matter how big you become in the world, every great artist still does their sound checks. And so, but it was the one time I didn't because the president was running late and Secret Service was controlling everything. And so here I was getting ready to stand up in a stadium that had, 30,000 plus, over 100,000 people outside the stadium, millions watching that night. And I was going to have to do it cold. And I did it cold. But I'll tell you, it was that moment where I got on my knees, Rebecca, and I said, Lord, please let the heavens and let the anointing of the Lord come down and double measure, because this was probably one of the biggest performances at that date of my career. And I was the most memorable my time with President Trump, and certainly out of to stand on stage and look out and see a sea of people who love America, and tears coming down faces as the anthem was being sung and raised, and to see this beautiful room of patriotism, and of course all of the press pool that was in the back of the stadium, then to see the millions of people through that lens during that moment. I tell you, Rebecca, it's why I value so much the moment of the national anthem, why it's sung, why it should always be revered, why it should always be honored, because it's the one moment where all of us from different persuasions and cultures and religions and what have you unify in celebration of our country. And it's a moment when all of
Amen.
our spirits and all of our souls come together to honor God, one nation under God, and honor this great country that we love. And I will always remember that moment with President Trump at the Amway Center, because it was a very culminating moment for me in my career, where I gained a greater sense of understanding and appreciation for why we sing the Star Spangled Banner, why we stop to honor our great country and those who have served, and how at the end of the day we're all Americans. We're all one big family.
We're
So
one nation. We're
that's
one
right.
human race, and that's what's so beautiful is that music reminds us of that very important fact. Now, Mary, you've been so vocal about how faith has played a big role in your life, and you yourself have certainly taken the road less traveled. What would you say to someone who feels maybe discouraged because they feel like they're on an unconventional path and can't really relate to anyone else? And how does your faith help you in all that you do?
Sure, absolutely. And thanks for giving us a space to talk about this, because at the end of the day, Rebecca, that is the root, that is the source of who I am. In the scriptures, the Bible says it is in him, meaning God the Father, Jesus Christ, that we live and move and have our being. And there is no Mary Millben, there is no Mary Millben the singer or the ambassador or what have you without the Lord being the root and the center of everything that I do. And so faith it is the driving force, it is the focal point. It is who I always refer people to when they say, tell us about your success, or tell us how you did this, or how did this come about, or what have you. I always first direct people back to the source, because there is no life or success without faith. I really believe that, and it's why I even, especially today, post COVID, to see how the world has changed, and there is a lot of disparity across the world. There is a lot of people looking for hope and searching. You've seen, the very sad numbers in the context of the rise of suicides and the rise of what's happening in our teens with, hopelessness, and all these difficult conversations and numbers we're seeing happening across the world with human behavior and condition. And I believe the only true answer to seeing those numbers dissipate and seeing human behavior and people coming alive again and restored again and centered again is a relationship with Jesus Christ, and a relationship that is rooted in faith. And I certainly say that in respect to all faiths. While I am a Christian and certainly boldly profess Jesus Christ, I want everyone to have a connection with their faith and root themselves in their faith, because that's what real life is about. That's what real success is about. And so I will say, Rebecca, certainly my fortitude or boldness to speak about faith has certainly increased, because I truly believe that as we look at the world, and unfortunately things are getting darker in a lot of ways, the only light that's going to keep us moving forward and focused and centered and united is the center of our faith.
And knowing that our creator God loves us and gave us purpose, and that each one of us is here to live
Yes.
out that purpose-driven life, and to really find what it is that everyone has wonderful, beautiful talents. And once we're able to recognize that that's a gift from God, it's one that we can share with other people, inspire other people, give hope to other people. Mary, this has been such a joy to have you with me. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing that your testimony and for being bold. You've lived really a truly fulfilling and purposeful life, and I have a feeling that there's still so much more to come. So thank you for joining us today. It's
Well,
been such a pleasure.
I appreciate Rebecca. Thank you for having me. And I just want to say before you go in your audience, just what you said. Every person that's watching this, you do have a purpose. God has given you a specific plan and purpose on this earth to execute. And so believe it, even if you don't know what that is yet.
That's
Uh,
right.
Let life play itself out. Be open to the beauty that God brings people, God brings opportunities. God, He'll make it all clear and plain. But believe that. Let that be at the root of who you are, that I have a purpose, I have a specific mission on this earth, and God will complete it through you.
And that is faith. Yeah, and that right there, what you've just described is faith, believing without seeing, and it starts there. It can be as small as a mustard seed.
That's
That
right.
faith, that belief will grow and multiply. And so we encourage everyone out there. Mary, again, thank you so much. You just have a beautiful voice of an angel. I hope to have you back with us again soon, and thank you for sharing your beautiful story with us. God bless you.
Bless you, Rebecca.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can listen to more just like it. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, or by downloading the AMAC app. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Until next time, I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your podcast, Better for America. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful evening.